Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. And we begin tonight with an I-24 News exclusive report. Our investigation revealing that the Obama administration allowed U.S. taxpayer money to be funneled to an al-Qaeda linked group in Sudan. Now, we discovered that most of the money was paid after the Obama administration realized its mistake. Our investigative reporter Eylon Levi has the story.
The Obama administration knowingly gave U.S. taxpayer dollars to an al-Qaeda affiliate in Sudan. A joint I-24 News Middle East Forum investigation reveals the U.S. government gave money to a designated global terror entity placed on the U.S. sanctions list over its financial support for Osama bin Laden. The story begins in February 2014. The U.S. Agency for International Development authorizes a grant of nearly $750,000 to World Vision, a Christian charity. The mission? Humanitarian relief for displaced persons in Sudan's war-torn Blue Nile state. World Vision works with a local partner, the Islamic relief agency ISRA. It gets $200,000 from USAID for humanitarian work on the ground, but it's not a simple aid organization. 10 years earlier, ISRA was designated a global terror entity by the administration of George W. Bush, blacklisting the whole global network of the Islamic Africa Relief Agency, aka the Islamic Relief Agency, or ISRA, accused of giving direct financial support to Osama bin Laden and labeled a former affiliate of Maktab al-Khidamat, the precursor of al-Qaeda. ISRA also accused of serving as a funding conduit for Hamas, raising money for terror attacks in Israel. Check the US sanctions list and the Islamic Relief Agency is there. Its US assets frozen, any dealings with it a criminal offense. World Vision insists it searched the sanctions list for Islamic relief in Sudan and got no results. It's listed as based in Missouri. Fast forward to November. World Vision tells the agency that ISRA might be on the sanctions list. Activities with ISRA are suspended, and USAID tips off the State Department and the Treasury. In February 2015, USAID confirms the mistake, telling World Vision to suspend activities with ISRA and to stop transferring it money.
ISRA should never have been a USAID subawardee. USAID did not identify ISRA as an organization subject to U.S. sanctions when it made the initial award.
But then in May, the administration decides to give ISRA the rest of the money anyway, an official says. The Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control issuing World Vision a license to make a one-off transfer of $125,000 to ISRA in Khartoum. World Vision says, for humanitarian work that was verified to have been completed under the grant, but in full knowledge that ISRA was on the Treasury's own sanctions list. According to the USAID official, all this was done in consultation with and on the guidance of the State Department under John Kerry. The State Department didn't answer our question, why approve money to a designated terror group, but a government official confirmed the story. State Department spokeswoman Helen Nauert told I-24 News. As this occurred under the prior administration, the current Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury and USAID administrator had no involvement in decisions surrounding this award or subsequent license. But John Kerry's chief of staff says this is the first time he's hearing of the USAID grant to ISRA. Grants don't typically cross the desk of the Secretary's office, he told us. I don't recall that I ever or the Secretary ever had eyes on any specific grant award. That's just not the way it works. From the Treasury, no response. A USAID official says the agency has learnt its lesson and staff now have to screen organizations getting US funding against the sanctions list. For its part, World Vision insists it has robust screening processes and strongly condemns terrorism.
We have no evidence that any of our funds have been used for anything other than urgent humanitarian work.
But the damning questions remain. Why did the Obama administration knowingly allow taxpayer dollars to be sent to a designated terror entity, and who knew? Eylon Levi, I-24 News.
Now, I-24 News worked on this report with the Middle East Forum. The co-author of the report is Sam Westrop, and he joins us live now. Sam, as we saw in this report, a discovery that the Obama administration approved giving taxpayer money to an al-Qaeda affiliate in Sudan, even after knowing that it was a designated terror organization. How did you find this out?
Well, like a lot of the work we do, it doesn't start with a dramatic leak of information or a secret contact somewhere. It starts with open source research. And in this case, astoundingly, the grant to Islamic Relief Agency approved by USAID was listed publicly on usaspending.gov, the government's grant tracking website. It's still there now. Your viewers can go look at it and see an al-Qaeda charity approved as a sub-grantee on the US government's own website.
How exactly did this Islamic Relief Agency, ISRA, become a designated terror organization? What has this agency done to support al-Qaeda and terrorism?
Well, most of its involvement with not just al-Qaeda, but the precursor to al-Qaeda, as your segment mentioned, Maktab al-Qidamat, but also the Taliban as well and other Afghani terrorist organizations and jihadist organizations. So ISRA, or the Islamic African Relief Agency, as it was more commonly known back then, was heavily involved with these groups, providing money, commingling money, in fact, with al-Qaeda or precursor to al-Qaeda organizations. It was involved in attempting to secure safe harbor for Osama bin Laden at one point when he was in the Sudan, where he spent many years. So for a long time, Israel was closely involved with violent jihadist forces. And in 2004, it was designated because of this involvement, because of this financing terror, because of this close personal connection with Osama bin Laden. That designation extended to its branches all over the world, including in Europe and also here in the United States. In Columbia, Missouri, they had a US office known briefly as the Islamic American Relief Agency. Charities like this like to adjust the names very slightly, often I suspect deliberately, to confuse people who wouldn't want to associate one branch with the other.
Yeah, it's no wonder that they disguise themselves, as you say. So, Sam, initially the Obama administration was not aware that this money was going to an al-Qaeda affiliate. So negligence at best here. But after discovering that the money was landing up in the hands of the Islamic Relief Agency, as we discussed, a confirmed designated terrorist financing group, why did this still go ahead?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating question, and I wish I had a clear answer. There are, I think, three things to be aware of here. The Middle East Forum with I-24, we obtained emails between USAID and World Vision staff immediately after World Vision alerted USAID that ISRA, their partner, was possibly on the terror designation list. Now, that's an interesting question itself. Why did it take the grantee, World Vision, the chief grantee, to alert the US government? Why did the US government not check its own terror list? So originally, as you said, the Obama administration, there's no evidence they deliberately approved an al-Qaeda charity for a grant. But there are a number of processes that government officials should check when they're about to award a grant to an organization, especially an organization in Sudan, a country that has had a long, close relationship with jihadist terror for many decades. One of these things is a SAM database. The SAM database is a list of all designated organizations and all approved organizations that may or may not receive government funds. ISRA is on that database, so someone in the government did not check that database. But then, most extraordinarily, in May 2014, the US government decides to issue a grant, despite knowing that ISRA is indeed on the terror designation list, to issue a license for World Vision to give some of the original money, lots of the original money earmarked for Islamic Relief Agency. The total amount from USAID money was $115,000 to a known designated al-Qaeda charity. Now, at that point, it's difficult to say this is merely naivety. At that point, it seems like complicity.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable. So, Sam, what happens next here? Are there any consequences for this? What's the next line?
I think so. We found this information because I happened to be going through a large amount of data on a US government website. we wonder how much else is out there, how many other extremist groups have received taxpayers' money because Obama-era bureaucrats, or indeed bureaucrats from any administration, were not paying attention or chose to look the other way. We don't know, as I say, the answer to that particular question. But how many other charities have benefited from this failure to make sure that the US taxpayer is not subsidizing hate and violence across the world? So consequences must be oversight. They must be investigation by Congress, especially by the Oversight Committee, by Senate Finance Committees, by any legislator or congressional committee that has an interest in overseeing how US taxpayers have their money spent. There must be political investigation. There must be an investigation into which bureaucrat oversaw this mess. Now, the emails we obtained from USAID show that quite a few both civil servants and what looked to be politically appointed bureaucrats were involved in this decision. There needs to be an investigation.
Right, but the buck
someone
has to
must
stop.
be held to account.
Absolutely, the buck has to stop somewhere. Unbelievable. U.S. taxpayer dollars funding terrorism. Sam, thank you so much. Sam Westrop with the Middle East Forum. Appreciate the report and appreciate your time.